This call is being recorded.
Okay.
If you have a bunch of there was another one here.
And none of what they are doing from winning.
See everybody later.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, just I slept at my cousin's house last night. So.
Say, that's one to get me yesterday. Now, one better.
Okay.
One better.
If you have a menu and Konatia.
Why? Because of the catch of the music group.
Yes.
Oh, I want better all right. Right.
So, we'll ship. No, we know what is it? Good afternoon, wherever you may be. Check with your time. It's 2 p.m. Today is October 8, 2016. This is Kofi Ayim, your host, Anything Africa. The co-host is Dr. Kwame Akonor, and the producer, the hard-working Sadick Abubakar. We're going to have a blast today. Slavery, reparations, and colonialization. We hope you're going to join us. It's going to be a big blast today. Write this number down for your questions and comments. 973-409-6422. 973-409-6422. Don't call yet though. And we shall return after our sick tune. And we all the time say, may I say thank you to the Pan-African Orchestra of Ghana. We got this sitting from them. We would like to thank our sponsors for this program, Transatlantic Container Lines, who's actually been helping African businesses. You want to ship your stuff to Africa and the world with a very secured container cross-Atlantic Ocean? You check with Transatlantic Container African Export Line. Call them at 973-286-3600. 973-286-3600. And tell them you have their ad from Jersey, Ghana Radio's Anything Africa. And Zimbabwe African Restaurant, Bergen Street, Newark. You want your Tiozavi and all African food? You check it at 1006 Bergen Street, Newark, New Jersey, 862-237-5534. And the big man, Dr. Andrew Badu, who is an internal medicine and he's a nephrologist. you have high blood pressure, diabetes, you call him. Call them at 973-674-8100 or 973-731-3800. Dr. Andrew Badu, who is fast becoming a community doctor now. And once again, you are welcome to Jersey Ghana Radio, Anything Africa. We are going to be joined in today by our own Dr. Leonard Jefferies, who is not new to this program and who has been involved in the course of African personality, identity, and its destiny for a very, very long time. We will also be joined by his colleague, partner in arms, Professor James Small, who is also not new to this program. And then, for the first time, we'll be honored to have Dr. Ron Daniels, who would also join us live. And of course, you, our listeners, will also be joining us live with your questions, wherever you may be, North, South, East, and West Africa, from the Caribbean, from Europe, from Asia, especially anywhere that we have our people. We hope you join us live to discuss this interesting and exciting subject, which is not going to go away anytime soon. And welcome, 1624. I think that should be Dr. Is that Dr. Daniels?
Yes, this is Dr. Daniels calling in.
Yes, Dr. Daniels, thank you so much. And we thank you very, very, very much. I just spoke with Dr. Leonard J. He will join us momentarily, and Professor Small. But you had indicated that you have a limited time. So
right.
We'll keep the ball rolling until they join us. And for those of you who do not know Dr. Daniels, I have not met him. As a matter of fact, it's a shame I never heard of him till someone recommended him for this program. We sent him a note, and he responded in kind upon all his heavy schedules. And he's going to lead our part of the discussion today. Dr. Daniels, this is Jersey Ghana Radio, Anything Africa. We do this every week, every Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. And we have some cluster of students who gather and then also listen. They learn, not only us, they also learn from what our scholars, what our intellectuals, what our Pan-Africanists tell us. And we'll say special thank you to some of the students at the University of Cape Coast in Ghana, who I know by now have gathered around a single computer and listening to this program. And I really don't even know how to introduce Dr. Ron Daniels, but you might as well Google him. He's a social and political activist, and he has taught, you name it, from Cornell College and Kent University. He has been associate professor of Black Studies at the College of Worcester. He holds a BA in history, an MA in political science, and a PhD from the Union Institute and University in Cincinnati. He's done it all. He has it all. And please, you want to find more about him, you Google. But there is one unique thing that he's been doing for us. And he's going to tell us some of the programs that they've planned, which is coming right at your doorsteps now. But let's start with you right away, Dr. Daniels. Pan-Africanism and the Black race. How did we come to end this way? That after several years, we'll still have to be struggling to get our recognition and put in the rightful place on the world pedestal? How did we get here?
Well, first of all, let me express a profound appreciation for inviting me to spend a few moments with you and your listening audience on the show today. Let me just say my most current sort of credentials, and I'm not much on introductions, is I am president of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, and I'm a distinguished lecturer at York College, City University of New York. I also host my own radio show Mondays on WBAI 10 to 12. It's called Vantage Point, Mondays 10 a.m. to 12 o'clock noon on WBAI. And I've had extensive experience hosting radio shows over the years. But let me just say that Pan-Africanism, of course, is an incredibly important topic. It is one which we will take up at the forthcoming State of the Black World Conference. There's a whole day devoted to a Pan-African Institute, which will be chaired by none other than Danny Glover, if you will. And Pan-Africanism, of course, is an aspiration. It is a goal. It is something that those of us who have been scattered from the motherland of Africa, have aspired to help lead. People like Du Bois and Garvey and Sylvester Williams, and just many, many people, Padmore and others, Malcolm X, who have sought to find a way to have black people of the world unite to have a base for global black power. Now, that's not easy for several reasons. Number one, color and skin color alone is not sufficient to build the base. Ethnicity and culture is far more important, actually, than skin color. So trying to get us together as black people is difficult because we also have to overcome our ethnic differences, even though in the broader sense, as I'm sure Dr. J and Professor Smalls would say, and as Anta Diop would say, we do share a common African worldview, a common view of the world, which is a basis for our unity. But still, our ethnicity does get in the way. Our culture gets in the way. And so we are trying to do something in a way that's not natural. We're trying to rise above our ethnic and cultural differences to use the commonality of our worldview, and the other aspect of it is the commonality of the resistance to white supremacy, the fact that we have been brutalized by the Holocaust of enslavement, by colonialism, and by neocolonialism on the basis of, as Malcolm would say, not the ethnicities, but our skin color, the fact that we're black. In reality, therefore, the other reality is those contradictions have not left us. We still have European powers who are attempting to dominate Africa, dominate African people, and to divide and exploit. And then internal to our different African societies and here in the United States as well, we have people who don't share the vision of Pan-Africanism in the way that we do, or who in some instances are actually in complicity with the colonizers, who are in complicity with the neo-colonizers. And so these become the contradictions that make Pan-Africanism a difficult proposition. Having said that, there was the Organization of African Unity that did come together. And now, of course, the African Union. It's a broad, loose confederation. We do have regional economic collaboration units in West Africa, East Africa, and South Africa. So we are striving. We are working towards a vision, to implement a vision, but it's not an easy one. It's difficult. It takes a lot of hard work in order to bring that vision about. And I might say in the diaspora, there's the effort to try to get the diaspora to be recognized by the African Union as a sixth region. And so, one of the things that we do with the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, and Dr. Jefferies particularly is a part of it, we have every 3 months what we call a Pan-African Unity Dialogue, in which we bring together African Americans, Afro-Latinos, Caribbean Americans, and African Americans to talk about our shared interest and to talk about ways and means in which we can move forward, practicing Pan-Africanism right here in the United States of America. So it's a big challenge, Brother Kofi, but it's one that we have to continue to work on and fight for. And, of course, your young listeners, out there certainly ought to be inspired, because there was no greater Pan-Africanist than the one, Kwame Nkrumah.
Well, Now, talking about reparations, last night, after I sent the notice out, I had like 3 calls from friends and family, and more than 3, but I'm just picking these 3. Basically, what they were trying to say was, why are we still on this topic? Why don't we let go these reparations and slavery thing and colonization? Why don't we move forward? What would you tell these 3 people who have this opinion about what we are discussing now? They think that we should let go and move on.
Well, I would say that certainly the Jews, and based on the Holocaust in Germany, did not let go. In fact, when they decided that maybe it wasn't quite important to have to keep embracing their Jewish identity, that they should assimilate and merge into German society and these various societies, is when they lost their sense of, or at least tried to downplay it. They found themselves being viciously attacked by Hitler and other forces on the basis of anti-Semitism, and 6 million of them were wiped out. Now, they have not forgotten that. In fact, they were paid reparations, the descendants of those who lost their lives in the ovens and in the chambers in Nazi Germany, because it is a well-established principle that when a people are dominated, are subjected to genocide, both mental, spiritual, and cultural genocide, it is a well-established international principle that those who commit these crimes have an obligation to apologize. They have and then they have an obligation to make restitution, to repair the damage that has been done. And there's been no greater Holocaust in human history than the ravaging rape and pillage of Africa. And so the powers that did same, all of those powers that came together in 1884 to carve up in the Berlin Conference Africa, and then to systematically rape it and pillage it even further after having perpetuated enslavement. And as Walter Rodney has put out in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, to a large degree, Africa today, even though it is growing and is stronger than it was previously, is still underdeveloped vis-a-vis in relationship to the European powers, because it was ravaged. Europe built its power, built its industrial and commercial and industrial revolution on the backs of African enslavement. And so therefore there is a claim, there is a cause to be met. And then in the United States of America, the same is true, where, for centuries, our people our families were destroyed, we lost lives, culture was attacked. And so America owes a debt, as Randall Robinson put it. And now Sir Hilary Beckles is talking about Britain's black debt and so forth. And I would say this, our ancestors who suffered, bled, and died are screaming out from their graves that we should not have historical amnesia, that we should not forget them. We should not forget these crimes, because it's not just a matter of memory in and of itself. It's about how we as a society still suffer. The Caribbean has been left in a mess as a result of European colonialism, enslavement and colonialism. And so it's time for the colonial slave master, the slave masters, the former slave masters, and the colonial colonists to pay up. And if we as black people unite and determine that we are going to get reparations, we will get reparations, because we will be united in that quest.
I think earlier this week, a panel of the United Nations actually concurred exactly what you're saying, that America owes our African American community reparations. They don't believe, though, that it is going to be fulfilled, but at least it leaves the subject, to an open discussion. Now, why did it take the United Nations to empower a panel for so long after these things have been, brought up, debated, and not? Do you think that it's a subject that should have been tackled long time ago by the UN?
Of course it is. Of course, these topics But everything, Brother Kofi, as you well know, it's like Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. The issue of reparations inside the United States of America is one that many African Americans, as you suggested before, were reluctant to talk about, wanted to put in the past because it's a painful subject. But it's only when we came to continue to educate ourselves, and there are many, many, many people who've been involved in that, not the least of which Queen Mother Audley Moore, my mentor, just over the centuries of the organization in COBRA, National Coalition for Reparations for Blacks in America, the book, The Debt by Randall Robinson, increasingly educating black people to ourselves. We have to, first of all, be determined ourselves. Nothing is possible if we don't believe it. We cannot achieve it unless we believe it. And if we believe it, then therefore the demand can be put. And I can tell you that the demand for reparations has never been stronger, never been greater than at the present. So it is that kind of pressure coming out of the African countries, coming out of the Caribbean, particularly the Caribbean countries, and now the countries here in the United States and then the UN decade with Africans and African Americans inside of these bodies, being the contradiction, calling upon this body to, in fact, address these issues. Yes, it took a while, but we need to celebrate the fact that call is being made. And I disagree that the whole notion is that they simply did it to put it out there for discussion. They're putting it out there because, as the Durban conference in South Africa laid out, people fought there to get the declaration that the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity, always should have been considered so, and that becomes the legal basis. And no, they didn't want that, but a determined group of black people from all over the world pushed that resolution. So again, power concedes nothing without a demand. If you don't make the demand, it will never be made. And as Frederick Douglass said, the limits of tyrants is prescribed by those whom they oppress, and these will continue unless those who oppress strike back with words or deeds or both. So it is in our hands to raise the issue, to press for the issue. I mean, if we would simply use the economic power we have as black people in this country, now well over $1 trillion in economic power that we could withhold in various ways from this U.S. economy, they would come to us saying, how much reparations do you want and when? But it is on us to organize ourselves to press the demand.
Yes, it is on us to organize ourselves and press the demand. You said it all. We are joined by Professor James Small, and like I said, he's not new to this program. In fact, he's basically been mentoring us on some of the topics that we developed. This particular topic was developed by a conversation which happened between the co-producer, Dr. Kwame Akonor, and Dr. J. They met sometime, and then, through discussions, with this topic came up. And before we go to Professor Small, I think, yes, and I think Brother Dr. J is also on there. But I know that Dr. Daniels have limited time. He indicated that he has limited time. So we are going to be on him for him to, educate us before we allow him to leave. But of course,
let me ask one question, Kofi. Sure. The Dr. Daniels, since we have coming up very soon the IBW World Conference in Newark, New Jersey at the Robert Treat Hotel, have you laid out the perimeters, the cost of the conference, the proceedings?
We haven't. We will let Dr. Daniels do that for us before he leaves us. Yes, we will do that. But Dr. Daniels, while we are on this, we never got, and I'm using the word we because I'm using African by the definition of Peter Tosh. It doesn't matter where you're born. So long as you are black, you are an African. So we never got the 40 acres and a mule that was promised. How do you think that they are going to be able to give us what they owe us? What they owe us? The 40 acres and the mule, after I said, we never got it. The promise was never fulfilled. Do you think there is something specific to do to basically extract our debt from them?
Well, I think I answered that in the last in the last question. But let me just say, in terms of the kind of work that is being done, leveraging off of what is happening in the Caribbean, because there is now in the Caribbean, spearheaded initially by the Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, pushing the 15 nations of CARICOM to adopt a unanimous resolution to demand from the former European and colonizers, reparations for native genocide and African enslavement. That is a huge development in terms of them developing the courage, irrespective of their political differences and political philosophies, to come to understand that white supremacy and its many manifestations has created what Sir Hilary Beckles has called a huge mess in the Caribbean that has to be rectified. Leveraging off of that, there's always been a strong reparations movement here in the United States of America. I referenced my mentor, particularly Queen Mother Moore, and the organization in Cobra. But also Congressman John Conyers pushing for H.R. 40, the reparations study bill, to try to compel at least an examination of those issues. But the most recent development is the formation of the National African American Reparations Commission, which is a parallel body to the Caribbean Reparations Commission. And we are working together to push the demand for reparations in this country. And we have a 10-point program. People can go to the website, ibw21.org. You can see both the 10-point program from CARICOM. You can also see the 10-point program being laid out here by the National African American Reparations Commission. And among those demands is the demand for land, the demand for land on the same basis that our Native American brothers and sisters, though not still made whole, at least they have sovereignty over particular sections of land over which they have 95% control to do as they wish. We want a similar kind of thing. And again, the ability to do that and ultimately achieve that objective will be a function of the degree to which we are righteously organized, outraged, and prepared to make the claim. Now, that's a nice segue, because one of the major things that is going to be discussed at the State of the Black World Conference is reparations. A whole section of the State of the Black World Conference, November 16th through the 20th, right in this area in Newark, New Jersey, will be devoted to reparations. A whole Pan-African Institute, which Dr. J will be involved in. Professor Smalls is being honored in terms of a legacy award. There are people coming from all over the world, for the Pan-African Institute being chaired by Danny Glover on November 16th. That evening, there will be a town hall meeting, free and open to the public, in which the global reparations movement will be discussed, again, with people coming from Europe, the Caribbean, and people with the National African American Reparations Commission. So this is a growing movement. This is something that has picked up more steam in the last 4 or 5 years than I've seen in my lifetime. And some of that's because of this new generation of not only the Black Lives Matter, but this young, brilliant scholar, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who made the case for reparations in the Atlantic Monthly magazine. A whole new generation of young people have been electrified by this, and now the movement for Black Lives has picked it up, and they're pushing it. So, again, as Martin Luther King said, it may not happen in my lifetime. That's irrelevant, but the stream, the river that's pushing forward on this issue is strong. The tide is strong. And, again, it will in part be manifested in people coming, we hope, in large numbers to the State of the Black World Conference, which will be right here in Newark, New Jersey, the 16th through the 20th of next month.
Well, you are going to speak more about this particular conference and the modalities, but we just want to welcome the president of the World African Diasporian Union, who is also known as Nana Kwekudua's Mind of Agogo, Dr. Leonard Jefferies. Yeah, Dr. J, welcome.
Well, certainly it's always a pleasure to join Africans when they're dealing with serious business, and certainly what we're dealing with and talking about now is some of our most serious business. So I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm certainly there. My brother in struggle for so many years, 40-plus years, Dr. Ron Daniels is with us. And certainly, again, Professor Smalls, 40-plus years of our relationship is what has helped us build this understanding of what the struggle is all about, what we have to do, and how we don't have any other option. This is a mission impossible, trying to link up African peoples worldwide, but it's a mission that we have to, and we have taken on, and we have to make sure is on a victorious path. So I'm glad our brother's here. I'm certainly one of those who is with him to the end, and I appreciated the great work that he has done, Dr. Ron Daniels, and I'm sure Professor Smalls feels the same. We will be with him, helping to make it a success, to continue the struggle that has gone on for many years.
Well,
and I appreciate your giving us this chance to bring it to the audience in New Jersey as well as across the world in Africa.
Yes, Dr. Daniels, now we come to you specifically on the event coming up, and Jesse Ghana Radio, this particular program, Finesse Africa, will be very much interested in whatever role we can play, but we can discuss that off air at immediately after a program or sometime when you are free. And of course, our newspaper, Amandla, of which I happen to be the editor, which is a monthly community newspaper, will also be interested. So we have a lot to do together. But tell us about the event, how it all came about and what it is. You mentioned it. It's free and open to the public, but we want a little bit more detail so we know time.
Well, let me do that. Let me just say this is State of the Black World Conference 4. Every 4 years after the presidential election, the Institute of the Black World 21st Century holds a State of the Black World Conference to do, among other things, to critique the outcome of the U.S. presidential election in relationship to its impact not only on African Americans, but the Pan-African world. So this conference is number 4. The first one was in Atlanta. The second one was in New Orleans. The third one was in Washington, D.C. Now we come to Newark, New Jersey, and specifically we come to Newark, New Jersey because of Ras J. Baraka, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, who is the son of one of the great poets, playwrights, and most importantly, political activists of our time, Emiri Baraka. And so we want to gather there in honor of him because many of the important political developments over the last half century came out of Newark, including a rebellion that took place in 1967. So this conference will be organized over 5 days, actually, starting on Wednesday, concluding on Sunday. And it will have 7 different tracks, one of which I already mentioned, the track on the Pan-African Institute and Reparations, Religion, Spirituality, and Liberation, Culture, Education, and Black Survival. For Black Survival, there'll be a session on economic empowerment, the war on drugs, and healing the black family. All of these topics will be discussed at the State of the Black World Conference. And we are pulling together people, again, from all over the world. Danny Glover, for example, is going to head up the Pan-African Institute. People like Susan Taylor, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, George Frazier, Dr. Julianne Malvo, Dr. Leonard Jefferies, who's on the line with us, Dr. Maulana Karenga, the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan is coming to close the conference out. I mean, it is the virtual who's who of the Pan-African world that will be there for this conference. Now, it is not free. Some sessions are free because we always make some sessions free and open to the public. There is a registration fee for the conference, and people can go to the website, ibw21.org. That's ibw21.org to review the schedule and to see all of the different parts of it because it's a massive undertaking. And, of course, one of the things that we're looking forward to is a presidential delegation actually coming from Ghana. The Minister for Tourism and Culture, will be making the announcement Monday, is going to be leading a delegation which will include some craftspersons, some kente weavers who are going to come and set up an exhibit to show how the kente cloth is made and that kind of thing. It's going to be very, very exciting in that regard. But we also have delegations coming from Brazil, from the Caribbean. There are people coming from Europe, and from all across the United States of America. So the key is to go to the website, to your audience, and we certainly want your audience. We want continental Africans, people like Sadick Y, whom you may know, are coming, and Dr. Chika Anani with the African Sun Times, Wally Idris Ajabadi, who's African Views. So we have some relationships with continental Africans who are mobilizing their constituencies to come as well. And we want your audience to be involved. And the way to do that is by going to the website ibw21.org, ibw21.org, to get all of the information. And then if you want to call, there's a toll-free number, 888-774-2921, 888-774-2921. And there's a Legacy Award program, and one of the persons who will be honored for his lifelong struggle and as a Pan-Africanist will be none other than Professor James Small. He has been preceded already by Dr. Leonard Jefferies, who received the award. I think he was in the first class, actually receiving the first class of Legacy Awards. So we'll be honoring a number of people, from this area and a number of people from around the country. And Hugh Masekela, who unfortunately won't be able to come to receive his award, but we're honoring Hugh Masekela. Randy Weston is being honored, the jazz musician who also is a Pan-Africanist as well. So this is a phenomenal opportunity for black people to come together, Brother Kofi, to talk about the issues that you have been discussing, but also to formulate concrete ways in which we can feed ourselves to leave equipped better to wage this struggle, this mission impossible, as Dr. J has said. It's an impossible mission that we have to make probable.
Well, Dr. Daniels, thank you so much. And of course, if you have time, you can stay on. But you told us that you have to leave, and we have.
I actually have some critical. I'm still working on the conference, so I've got some critical tasks that I have to continue to pursue. And so, Dr. J and Professor Smalls are both engaged, and I'm sure they will continue to also fill you in on various details and to continue to remind the audience to become involved. They're both incredibly supportive and strong, and you have no better really representatives in terms of the sort of the work that has gone on over the years than Professor James Smalls and, of course, our inimitable Dr. J.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ron Daniel.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yes, and we will be in touch. Thank you. Yes, Professor Small.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I want to thank you and the staff for having Dr. Daniels on at such a short notice. But he is one of those extraordinary figures that's out of our history, that's been out here a long time, leading in this struggle. And this conference is absolutely important, not only for the diaspora who came over here via the prisoner of war slave process, but for the modern diasporans who are here in this country, who are having children in this country, and who are suffering some of the same things, if not the same things, that the rest of us who have been here for centuries are suffering. And then the conference will also address very heavily the relationship between us and the diaspora, all aspects of the diaspora, and what is going on at home on our continent with our natural resources, with education, with healthcare delivery, with the United States of African concept coming out of the African Union. All of these things will be discussed, and I hope my Ghanaian brothers and sisters, especially who I've worked with for over 45 years, will take heed and get more involved in the social politics where you live. You live in America now. You got to come out of the shadows. You're not illegal immigrants. Stop hiding. Stop hiding. Take responsibility for your children's future, or you're going to lose them to the drugs and to prison, just like many of us have done, and which, like many of you have right now, suffered in silence. But I'm out here. I know what's going on. And so stop suffering in silence. Come together with the rest of us. Come and sit and learn what's going on from us and make your inputs to help change the African world. And this conference is a very important tool for that. And many of you who are hearing my voice, you know me, because I've worked with every association from the Santi Men to Hebe Bovo to Gardengbe Kipi to Kohuman, and you name it. Even with the Muslims Association, I help you organize many of those associations. But it's time you come out of the shadows. be citizens of America and be strong black African citizens of America and be advocates for Africa. All other people who migrated here are advocates for their country, advocates for their culture. We've got to come out of the shadows and be advocates for our continent and be advocates for our culture. And this convention, the IBW conference that's going to be in Newark, is going to show us many of the ways that we could use. I'm not talking about jeopardizing your job and jeopardizing your life. I'm talking about being able to participate in the civic events that affects your life every day. And I hope y'all hear my voice. And
I think we hear you loud and clear. And this goes not only to Ghanaians, the African population, the recent African immigrant population in the U.S.
Yes.
Travel.
But you know, Ghana is my heart, so I'm closer to Ghana than I am to any other African nation. That's why I have to speak to them so directly.
Well, where are the leaders of the Ghanaian community in and around the tri-state? New York, the Council of Ghanaian Association in New York, and the Council of Ghanaian Association in New Jersey. Mr. Gamna in New York and Mr. Kwaku Amo in New York. Is high time you gather your people and get involved in the civic duties. And of course, our religious leaders. I know, Dr. J, one of your nephews is listening to this program. I will not mention his name, but he promised me he will listen. And I know he's listening in. So I hope he's also going to lead his people in taking full participatory role in the event, which is for and about us. As you said, Professor Small, we don't get involved, we are likely to lose out, if we haven't lost them already, to a system where there is no hope, where there is no faith, where there is no future for them. The future is in Africa, and it's high time we got ourselves together as a unit body. I was so pleased when I found out about Dr. Ron's the flyer he sent on an email to me. I saw some brothers, and I was very pleased who are involved in this event coming. That's Brother Sadick Y, who is not new. Actually, our producer's father. He's there, and my good friend Wale, who has African Views. You can check them his site on the website. And then my colleague, who is the publisher of the African Sun Times, Dr. Onyani. So people are getting involved. People are getting involved. Recent African immigrants are getting involved. The question is, are you getting involved? You, the listener, are you getting involved? 973-409-6422. Before we go to Dr. J, let's quickly listen to a soundtrack from, I hope we get through, Mr. Hugh Masekela, who is going to be honored, but he will not be here. He is one of the best trumpeters that we can. We're just going to hear a little piece from him, and then we continue.
And I'm from.
All right, we are back, and that was a very short piece from Hugh Masekela. We just played it because we are honored that he is going to be honored at this event, and even though he may not be there, as Dr. Daniels told us, but Hugh Masekela is a maestro. He's a legend in his own way. He's among the greatest in the jazz world. Dr. J.
Yes, brother. It's good to hear you carrying on the international airways, bringing this African knowledge and message. Knowledge is power. African knowledge is African empowerment.
So, you tell us, we have at least briefly, Dr. Daniels. Say that again? Dr. Daniels educated us on the reparations and what we're going to do. But Dr. J, slavery and colonialization. Someone is speaking, get me feedback. Slavery, we want you to educate us on the connectivity or interrelationship, if you will, between slavery and colonialization.
Well, certainly, I'm glad that we're raising all of these issues because they're a part of the knowledge that we should master. And but if we have the knowledge and we don't have what I call the necessary technique for handling the knowledge, we won't be able to do what we need to do. By the necessary technique, I mean that we have to have a systems analysis of the knowledge we're using for our own development and for understanding our present situation and our past foundation. And so systems analysis means we have to go deep in understanding. Superficial understanding of things will not benefit you. You have to go deep. And as El-Haj Malik, El-Shabazz, Malcolm X said, history is that discipline which will reward us most if we get into it in a serious, deep way. And so I'm calling for our people to understand that these activities that we are producing and carrying out are designed to help instill in us a consciousness of deep understanding of who and what we are and what our circumstances are today and how they came about and what is the future for us if we decide to empower ourselves and make that future real. So these are not activities just to celebrate, just to commiserate, just to lay out what has been the historical past. These are activities to empower us. We have to learn to speak truth to power, and certainly in this day and age, that means speaking truth to those powerful forces who, for the last 500 years, 1,000 years, have dominated the world scene. So we need to speak truth to power, but that power speaking process won't have real fruit for us unless we are prepared to speak a deeper truth to empower our own people. We speak truth to power to state what the situation is. There is a need for reparations because of the damage and the dehumanization that has taken place around African peoples and the continued domination that takes place. So we have to speak truth to power in relationship to that. The European world dominating African peoples, the Arab world dominating African peoples, and now the new emerging world out of Asia dominating African peoples. So that is a mission impossible that we have to be about, a mission that we have to take on. But the most important mission is to speak truth to power to ourselves, to empower ourselves. So there's a double possibility, speaking truth to power to let the powerful forces dominating us know that there's going to be a new approach, a new understanding, a new world. But in order for us to make it a new world, a new empowerment, we have to give the knowledge to our people. That means globally to our people, not just those on the African continent. Because, yes, it is true. The future is in Africa. Africa is the mother, father of us all. But Africans claim not just the continent, they claim the planet. Africans have been spread throughout the planet to create the human family. Africans have strategic positions and strategic populations throughout the planet. So the continent is key, but its link to the global African family is our reality. And so there are 200 million people in Brazil. At least half of them have declared themselves by the last information I got from the vice president of Brazil, who said a few years ago when they asked the Brazilian population how many people identified African, 13% said they identified African. They did it just most recently, and 50% of the Brazilian population identify African. And so you have throughout South America and the Caribbean and Black America, as well as in Europe, strategic populations of Africa that link back to the mother-father foundation that's in the continent. You may have European citizenship in England or European citizenship in France, or you may have taken up citizenship in Saudi Arabia. But the source and the reality of our existence is the mother continent. And so we have to put in place a global African reality which will produce this unity that we're seeking. And so the various activities that you see that we're laying out are not just for the entertainment or not just for the celebration. They're for putting in place a meaningful working African unity that can grow. And you can't expect it to come from youngsters who are now in school or youngsters who are on the street protesting. That is energy that needs to be harnessed. But the deep involvement of those of us who've had for decades and half a century, and some of us moving on to even more than that, that knowledge has to be tapped. You don't expect the young man who's starting college or the young man who's working hard to produce a family to have all the knowledge he needs to make this reality for our future become something significant. So we need the dialogue, we need the connection, we need the narratives, we need to redefine who and what we are. One of our great scholars who hopefully will convince to come to the activity in November, Dr. Wade Nobles, he has said many powerful things. He's an Africanist scholar of enormous intellectual capacity and a psychologist and a brother who understands our deep circumstances and situations. And he said many powerful things. And one of the most powerful that Professor Small and myself and my wife and Professor Small's wife and family that we deal with is African people. Now, this is his powerful words. African people everywhere, Black people everywhere suffer greatly from a shattered consciousness and a fractured identity. And that shattered consciousness and fractured identity is not something that is happenstance. It did not happen by accident. It was a part of the process of other powerful forces emerging that wanted to dominate African peoples, dominate the continent, the richest continent in the world, a Garden of Eden, blessed by the resources that are not in any part of the world. And, of course, the domination of the human family, because African peoples are the foundation, the mothers and fathers of the human family. So we have to redefine ourselves beyond just being Ghanaians and Nigerians or South Carolinians or Jamaicans. We have to redefine ourselves as the essence of humanity. And the attack on us, which has been systematic over the thousands of years, as our great doctor explained, the 3,000-year attack has gone on African people. But the last 500 years has been a very serious attack by the European world. The system of white supremacy has put in place the dehumanization of African peoples that we have to counteract with the truth of who and what we are. So we have a mission. Get your jobs, get your education. That's the end-all and be-all. You have a mission to restore Africanness to its greatness and to enhance it even further. Without Africanness in the future of the world, it will be chaos, destruction, devastation. So our mission is way beyond our personal circumstances and way beyond our ethnic circumstances and way beyond any religious traditions we may adopt. We have a mission to restore the African family, the world human family, even to greater dimensions than has previously occurred. So that's my way of introducing some of my ideas. And if you want to hang on there, we can stay on with Professor Smalls making his contribution, and we can continue it after this program. We've committed to give our lives to this struggle. We've committed our families to give their lives to the struggle. We've committed the people we reach and teach to give their lives. And so it's not about a job. It's not about raising up a nationality. It's not about pounding yourself on the chest as an individual. It's about the collective responsibility we have to the human family. And we'll go into more detail on that, but that's my way of introducing that we need to master the knowledge. We need a real narrative of empowerment. We need a systems analysis based upon deep understanding of things.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Leonard Jefferies. So let's go to Brother Small. Professor Small.
Yes, sir.
Slavery and its effects as related to what we discussed, including reparations. Now, we all know that they took the strongest, the most wealthiest people from Africa. They took the healthiest people and the strongest people from Africa, depriving the continent of Africa of human resources to come and build their countries from scratch for them. So there is double jeopardy here. Taking the human resources out of Africa, the strongest and the healthiest, because of course, if you weren't healthy, how are you going to be able to cross the Atlantic? And then coming here, using their strength and their knowledge, including culture and indigenous environment, like nature around them, to help them build their country. And then after that, basically dumping the Africans who came here into whoever the hands of posterity. So we lost in Africa, basically, and here also, by here I mean out of Africa, including the Caribbean, America, and Europe, we basically also lost. We had to struggle on our own from scratch. And like we know, we believe that if former slave masters knew that Africans had mind and knowledge of their own, and then can do things maybe even far better than them, they wouldn't have even allowed Africans into their classrooms to learn. How do we marry this? The depletion of the human resources from the mother continent, and then coming out, building their countries for them, and then leaving them at the mercy of Almighty God, without at least harnessing their resources for them to reap some of the benefits. And we're talking here, for example, about the 40 acres and the mule, which never came.
Well, let me first apologize that I will have to leave a little early to go to an event in Harlem. But you covered a lot, Brother Kofi. And when we talk about slavery, we have to remember, as you were saying, they brought the best of our youth, the strongest of our people, some of the most brilliant minds. But while they were putting them on the ship to bring them over here, they were conquering and burning our villages to the ground. With the British burning Benin City to the ground, with the Portuguese and the attacking Congo and burning major metropolis in Congo to the ground, using their military to enslave us on the continent, to work on their rubber plantations and cotton plantations and all to get ivory and to dig mines. And so slavery wasn't just in the Western Hemisphere. We got to be clear about this. Their enslavement was of the entire population of the continent. In the modern days, they call that enslavement colonialism. But if you take away a people's language, and you take away a people's right to practice their culture and their spirituality and their religion, and you take away their right to determine how they will make a living, and you force them under arm and under whips, and you do like the Congo, you cut off the hands by the hundreds of thousands, you cut off the foot to force people to work, you lynch and burn. All of this is not in America now, this is in the Congo, while the same thing is going on in America. So when we talk about reparations, we're not just talking about reparations for those who were in the Western Hemisphere, Central, South America, or the Caribbean. We're talking about reparations for those on the continent as well. The greater damage was not done to us in the diaspora. The greater damage was done to us on the continent. And it's a damage that carries on to this day, where we still are using the curricula of the enslaver and the colonizers to educate our children. We still look at the colonizers' religion as being primary, and we look at the indigenous religion and denigrate it and profane it with all kinds of ugly definitions and words. So at one hand, we say, oh, yes, we honor our mother and our father, but when it comes to our African mother and father, we show them the greatest disrespect humanly possible by denying their culture, denying their religion, denying their spirituality, denying their history. We do not demand that it's taught in our schools anywhere in Africa. And so when we look at it like that, reparations is a universal African proposition. And that 40 acres and the mule that they promised in America, believe it or not, there was one general in South Carolina who did issue 40 acres and a mule.
General Sherman.
Sherman, and then they came and took it away from the people after they removed Sherman from power. But most of us never got it. We never got the 40 acres and the mule. We never got the reparations. And we have a historical document to show they gave reparations to the Japanese for interning them during the Second World War. They've given reparations to some of the Native American nations for the genocide practiced against them. The Americans even participated in giving reparations to the Jews, which we are still giving to the Jews in Israel till this day. Every year, hundreds of billions of dollars of reparations is going to the Jews for what happened to them in Europe. We gave reparations to help rebuild Europe, which is called the Marshall Plan, after it had been destroyed by war. But we won't give reparations to the people who built America. We won't give reparations to the people of Africa whose resources and bodies built Europe and America. And so, no, this is a very serious question, but it must be put into the context that Dr. Jefferies is talking about, that we must have a systems analysis of what have been done and then come up with a systemic solution on how we're going to resolve the contradiction that has been left behind. And that's not going to be easy, because Africans are afraid of being Africans again. We want to wear the African clothing. We'll even wear an African natural hairdo. We'll even listen to some drum rhythm, but we do not want to recreate the African mind. We do not want to recreate the African spirit. We do not want to recreate the African cosmology in terms of how the African mind perceived the cosmology and the ecology and our relationship to them. That's called traditional African spiritual systems. And until we are willing to return to the human being we were before we were infected and contaminated by European culture, we will never know freedom.
Yeah, Professor Small, you made some very profound statements out here, and quickly to recap some of the things that you were saying, going back and then having our own minds, like minds of Africa. Professor W. Abrahams wrote a book about the mind of Africa, and I think people should try to read that book. When I think he was the vice chancellor then at the University of Ghana, Legon. Interestingly, In the coming issue of Amandla, which is next week, we have a front page article on Akonor, the religious shrine in Latin Ghana. And I know already how some of my friends are going to react. Because
I poured libations at the Akonor shrine for many years. And I knew the shrine when Nana Parabia was still alive. And Dr. Jefferies and us, when we would travel up in the hills, we would stop at Latte, so I could go in the shrine and pour libations with them. It is one of the most powerful spiritual institutions in Africa, and people think of the physical pieces, but they need to understand the cosmological philosophy, the theology behind the Akonor shrine. And you will find that that theology is more ancient than Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. Matter of fact, that very theology that's in Latte in the Akonor shrine is the parent theology of the Judeo-Christian Islamic theological tradition. When we study our history,
this is a subject we have to treat another time. But our correspondent who went there just called. He called me when I was discussing with him. He said, "Kofi, you know what? What I observed there and the teachings in church, because he's a staunch Christian, I didn't see much of a difference." And I said, "Wow, that is what he said." Anyway, you also made some statement about reparations for Africa, and you are so right. Even now, when African governments come for loans at the World Bank or IMF, you look at the strings attached to such loans. The strings attached to such. We have a small boy here in the studio who but the strings attached to the loans of World Bank and IMF. But you know what? Reparations, as you alluded to, does not have to be like a given amount of money to every African American or every African. But it could be used for development without strings attached. They said, okay, we are giving this such and such amount of constructing, for example, a railway line from Egypt to South Africa or from Liberia through to East Africa, and so on and so forth. That without any strings attached. That is not a loan. That is at least paying for the sins that they did. Meaning human beings, human nature, working for them for free. And at the end of the day, not even treating us as human beings, but treating us as their property. So we're not talking here like maybe we're going to get $1,000 and put in our pocket. No. It was a collateral damage. And therefore, a compensation must be collateral that will benefit a huge society. That is basically what, because sometimes people get confused. One of my friends I was discussing yesterday, like I said, I have 3 friends when I sent the notice out. And they're like, why are you talking about these things now? Why don't we move forward? I said, well, you know what? One of them I told. You cannot move forward in a positive way if you don't see what went wrong behind you, because it will come in a cycle and block you like we are seeing.
Well, let me not be as gentle as you, because I hear that all the time. That is the dialogue of a coward. I don't care that he's your friend. I don't care that he's your brother. It's the dialogue of a coward, because they knew that very person who made that statement would not tell the Jews to forget the Holocaust. They would not tell the Jews not to say never again. They will not tell the Jews to not celebrate Passover, which they've been celebrating for thousands of years. How dare they tell us we forget our past while they celebrate and praise our oppressors, celebrating and praising their past. See, I know better. And the weak cowards among us, get behind me and learn how to respect your mother and your father, how to respect your ancestors who died for you and lived for you. You have no right to call yourself by any of the names they made sacred unless you respect their sacredness having lived. So don't pray to a false God while pretending you have love for your parents. And so I'm not easy anymore because there's no reason to be easy. Because many of these brothers and sisters have gotten their degrees and their doctorates and their medical degrees and their nursing degrees on the back of the poor who've gone to the streets and fought for change but didn't have the wherewithal to make it to the universities. So you walk in the blood of your brothers and sisters with your soles of your shoes saturated with their blood, and then you tell them all that was worthless. Just move forward now. Who are you? Who are you?
Well, brothers and sisters, 973-409-6422. Don't be afraid. This is an intellectual discourse. We don't have to agree on the topic.
I know, but I like to come very hard intellectually. So they know there's an African spirit behind me. So there is a heavy spirit because our children need us. We need our intellects. We need our professionals. They need to come back home. The children need you. The future needs you. You can't run away from Africa and its history and think you're going to make a better world. It's not going to happen. It's not logical. So let's use the logic we've learned in these universities, and let's build the nation our ancestors dreamt of when they sacrificed so that we would have opportunity. Let's do what their sacrifice demanded of us. Well, I think that's clear, and I'm doing it humbly with the greatest kindness from my heart.
Thank you, Professor Small. Caller 7144. Whether you have a comment or question, you have only 2 minutes, please. And I'm serious. I'm watching my 2 minutes, whether question or comment. Go ahead.
My question and comment will just take a minute. I listened to Dr. Jefferies. I met him many years ago when Mandela came here. And I'm very pleased of what Professor Smalls is talking about. My question, though, is this. Why is it that Africans, and I'm speaking all the developed nations, use their local languages, why the Africans still insist on using language that they do not understand to be the medium of instructions in their basic training of teaching children? And I'm an advocate for that, and especially in Ghana, that I think the common language in Ghana, which happens to be the Akan, should be the medium of instructions on all levels. And I believe most of the scientists, engineers, and all these are being left behind based on the story you just said, that most people make it to the universities in the blood of those who sacrificed, yet did not get the chance to make it to higher education because they did not use foreign languages. And I like to, and on top of the celebration, even 9/11 is 15 years ago. It's been celebrated every day, but most Americans refuse and avoid to look for a form of remembering what slavery has done to Black people across the entire world. And I'll hold back for your comments.
Well, those comments, my dear brother, was absolutely beautiful and very much correct. I hold and agree with you 100% that we need to teach our indigenous languages in our schools across Africa. That would be one of the most revolutionary steps we can take right now. And I think President Mahama had been advocating that, and I thought it had been passed in Ghana that they were to go to teaching at least at the university level, but it should be from the first day school through the university, where we teach in our indigenous language all subject matters, because our language carry our science, our language carry our notion of mathematics, our language carry our philosophy. So perception comes as a result of your linguistic interpretation of something. And so if you have the language of your enemy, the interpretation of your crisis will be from their perspective, not from yours. And so language is so important and so essential. So let's pray that the movement, there is a movement afoot in many parts of the continent to get the schools to adopt the indigenous languages of the people rather than to continue using the language of the colonizers and enslavers.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. 973-409-6422. You are live with Dr. Leonard Jefferies, Nana Kwekuduadjumai, I think the first or second, and Professor James Small, who is Nana Kofi Amponsa. And then, of course, earlier on we had Dr. Ron Daniels, who educated us on reparation. So now we are left with slavery and colonialization, its effect on the mindset. And the caller just asked, the question of why don't we use, like he gave an example in Ghana. There are so many languages in Ghana, Africa. And it will be a challenge, actually, because, Soviet Union, when it was Soviet Union, had over 200 languages, but they were able to use the Russian language, to advance their course, and it helped them a lot. But so we can try with a model country, a given country in Africa, but it all needs commitment and courage from a given leader. There's going to be resistance, that's for sure, because of ethnic differences. As Dr. Daniel said from the program inception, there are these ethnic differences, which is there, but we can overcome it.
Yes, we can.
Our ancestors overcame it.
Yes.
They built Egypt, Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. Why can't we do that now?
We have examples even in modern Ghana. When we say Ga Adangbe Kipi, we're not talking about one people. We're talking about 4 different ethnic nations, at least 3 different ethnic nations coming together to make up the greater Ga nation. When we talk about the Ashantis, that wasn't one people. That was multiple peoples agreeing to come together and form one nation. We saw the Yorubas. The Yorubas wasn't just one family. That was multiple nations that came together and formed the greater, what became the Yoruba Empire. The same thing in the Nile Valley, Egypt. Dr. Jefferies can remember the Pharaoh who brought them together in the unity. But it was multiple nations of Africans, ethnic nations that was pulled together. So our ancestors did it in the past. They left us philosophical and theological understandings that we can refer to now if we go and study our history to help us do these things in the future. And so that's why history is so important. And so when we understand slavery, slavery took away our language. Slavery took away our human beingness. Slavery took away our understanding of what our relationships should be. And we need to use our history to like Dr. Noble says, to let us remember again what it was and let us imagine that it's possible to create the restoration. So we've got to go back in time in order to understand slavery, in order to know what reparations effects should be. You've got to study history.
Well, we've got to study history. Let's go to Dr. J.
Yeah, because I'm going to leave y'all in about 5 minutes if y'all would permit me, because I do have to get to another city for a quick event. But my teacher, Dr. J, can handle everything. He's actually, as we say, he's a God having a human experience. So we make him the God of history and the God of politics in our culture.
Well, thank you so much, Brother
Small. You're welcome, brothers, and all the sisters who are listening. Y'all be strong, free Africa, free our children's future.
And we'll go to Dr. J, and then later we'll continue the program with playing music. You are listening to Jersey Ghana Radio, NS in Africa, our weekly intellectual program. And once again, we would like to thank some students at the University of Cape Coast in Ghana who gather around a computer and listen to this program religiously every week. We've heard what you have been doing, and of course you have a number that you can send your questions and comments to that particular number so they can be forwarded to the producer. For all others, you can forward. If you have a question or comment, yes, of course, you can call 973-409-6422. If you don't want to pick up a phone and call, you may send your message, text or WhatsApp to 201-704-5838. 201-704-5838. And let's go to Dr. J. Dr. Jefferies, I don't know, he's been all over the place. All over the place. I first met Dr. Jefferies before 1993, because 1993, I remembered vividly when we met at Nana Dimizulu's place when Osajifo Kuntun Kununkun was here in the U.S. But prior to that, we have a meeting, and some meetings at the Clark House, which is in Harlem, the Clark that you guys basically developed our elders in memory of John Henry Clark, where, Dr. Jefferies and his peers, they will meet the Nobel and the rest, and they will just go and sit under their feet and listen to letters of interest. The late Dr. Ben and Dr. John Henry Clark himself. So Dr. J has been everywhere, and he's been involved in anything Africa. And by that definition of Africa, we are looking at the definition of Peter Tosh, who sings in his song that it doesn't matter where you're born. So long as you have a color like the color of my skin, you are an African. Dr. J, tell us about colonialism and its effect on us now, Africans.
Well, certainly, and we need to be clear on what colonization was all about, and where we're going with our activity is in the direction of restoration of African humanity, because we have to realize that the system that was attacking us, the various systems, their role and their objective was to try to dehumanize African peoples. But our resilience is such that here we are at this juncture seeking to establish a renaissance of Africanness and restore our particular important place at the head of the human family. So colonialism becomes a part of this larger process, but we do not want to single it out without relating it to the war against Africans, which was enslavement. And African nations were faced, and African peoples were faced to a coalition of European nations that put in place, first and foremost, the exploitation of the enslavement system, in which Europeans planned to devastate Africa and exploit Africa. And in fact, the term slavery doesn't seriously originate with Africans. Slavery comes from the word Slavs. Slavs refers to the people of Eastern Europe who were subject to enslavement by the Western Europeans. And that term has been applied to Africans. So we say, unfortunately, without our really understanding, slaves were taken out of Africa. No, African captives were taken out of Africa, African peoples, and they were put in a process to dehumanize them that we refer to as the transatlantic slave trade and its aftermath. Colonialism is the process that followed the enslavement process, because the Europeans, seeking first and foremost to exploit Africans and take them out of Africa and have them become the key ingredient for the development of the so-called New World. There could be no New World in any real sense unless the power of Africa was harnessed. And so it was. And so Africans taken out of Africa, these captives, became the building blocks for the so-called New World. And that enslavement process and those building blocks led eventually to Europeans deciding that we needed to have greater impact on the African continent, so we need to colonize it. We need to set up a European presence physically on the continent. So colonization comes from decisions made by Europeans at their major meetings to divide up Africa and let the French have this portion and the Spanish have that portion and the Portuguese have that portion and the Dutch and the Belgians have that portion. And then the Germans, Johnny-come-latelys, Bismarck, the leader of Germany, called in 1884-85 a meeting in Berlin so that the Germans can get a piece of the division of Africa, which became the colonial system. And so they met in Berlin and divided up Africa. And then a few years after they met, especially when they got the technology of the Gatling gun, which is the granddaddy of the machine gun, in the 1890s, the Europeans were prepared to go into the continent.
That everyone said he lost
their piece of the action. And so, as laying the foundations for colonialism, and then when Africans struggled against colonialism, and the Europeans had their own conflicts like World War I and World War II, and then the Africans moved on to revolution and resistance and new nations, and so the Europeans gave in to the demands of the Africans and established these new states. But these new states really become, as Dr. Kwame Nkrumah of Sajifo, the leader of Ghana, said, these new states became a process of neo-colonialism, a new colonialism, that they weren't really full nation states that could function and serve their people. So you have to see the movement from the dehumanizing process of enslavement, taking Africans out of Africa to build the New World, and then that New World power and force that helped France develop, helped England develop, helped create a United States, that new power that was founded on our strength turns back on Africa with a new colonialism and the rape and pillage that's taken place. And so we have to see the interaction of these historical events to be able to appreciate what we're dealing with. And so slavery begets colonialism. Colonialism begets neocolonialism. And neocolonialism is the position that we're at now. How can we take the results of neocolonialism, the new type of colonialism, and make them into an African economic and political and cultural entity centered on the unity of the continent? And that's the great challenge. Ghana is significant as a part of the struggle against colonialism and moving us into this new era of how can we forge various levels of continental unity on the continent and link it with the African world community. But we're constrained because those who have been trained in French colonialism are taught to think like the French. I learned to speak French when I went to Europe and studied international affairs. And so je comprends très bien les difficultés en ce qui concerne le langage. Quand on parle français, le cerveau est formé comme les Français. When you speak French, your mind is formed like the French. And so when I first met Africans in Europe in 1959-60, when I was studying there, I ran up to these brothers and sisters because I wanted some love and affection, and not many black people were in Europe, and they said to me, je suis africain, je suis français, not je suis africain. The leaders in 1959-60 being educated in Europe, black leaders were being educated to be European counterparts. Those trained in England were trained to be black Brits. Those trained in France were trained to be black Frenchmen. Those trained in Portugal were trained to be Portuguese. So this conflict and this process of identification and who and what we are is a serious one, and it's global. It's not just a question of any particular nation or region of Africa, but it's global. It's in the Caribbean. Every little island in the Caribbean, the 15 or more islands, has a separate identity. and that comes out of the mind control and the experience of the Europeans imposing their values on us. So it's a new day. It's restoration. It's Renaissance. It's Africans conceiving what they want to have for themselves. And one of our great scholars, Dr. John Henry Clark, who we named the Clark House for because he was one of our elders whose feet we sat at as he gave us his knowledge and wisdom and linked us up to other elders like Dr. Shekanta Diop, and even linked us up to white scholars like Professor Basil Davidson, who is a European, a British man who wrote about the lost cities of Africa and about the golden age in Africa. And one of his latest books is The Curse of the Nation State, and that refers to colonialism and neocolonialism, that these states that we're trying to make work are just transitional parts of our history. In other words, we need to transform from these many states to regional territorial entities and to a continental unity and to link that unity to the diaspora. That's where we're going, whether we understand it or not. We just can't. Togo, Dahomey, now Benin, a mega state, Nigeria, multiple African nations and territories are woven into what became Nigeria. Cameroon. So we've got to see that these colonial entities that we inherited are transitional stages and building blocks for greater African unity. And when the brother raised the question of learning African culture and traditions in the language, he's absolutely correct. Africans have the capability, and it's been proven, to master multiple languages. They can master multiple African languages in the areas where they are, and they also can master a lingua franca or two in the European world or the Asian world or the Arab world. So there's no limitations on what we need to do to challenge our people to learn. But you can't have your culture, your languages looked at as inferior and not capable of helping you grow and develop. And so that whole thing has to be changed. The work of Dr. Shekanta Diop, among others, is fundamental. His final great work is Civilization or Barbarism. It was written in French, and I took upon myself the mission of trying to get it translated into English. And eventually, it was published in 1981 in French, and eventually in 1991, we got it published in English. But that is a summation of the intellectual struggles we've been engaged in. It is the victory. It establishes African origin of humankind millions of years ago, African evolution of society a couple 100,000 years ago when modern humanity, Homo sapiens sapien, dominated, and it establishes the cradle of civilization for the world coming out of the Nile Valley and other river valleys in Africa. So once you tap into this knowledge and you have an understanding of it, you know it can be used for your empowerment and help to restore Africa to even greater understanding of who and what they are and what their potential is. We're encouraging people. Don't get mad, don't get sad, be prepared, and stop worrying about the behind and get into the African mind. And we're on our way.
Well, Dr. Jefferies, I hear you, I understand you, and of course, some of us appreciate the struggles that some of you have been doing for a long, long time. You know, the problem that at least I see in contemporary Africa is our people accepting their natural self. Accepting their natural self. And especially for those of us who think that we've been to schools without necessarily being educated. Because we don't know much of our own history. We don't value our culture. And talking about our language, no. Sometimes you meet your own compatriots from the same place, ethnic place in Africa. And the person would start to speak English to you. When maybe you start, and that is characteristics of my own people, the Akan people. You don't get other ethnic groups doing that much, but our Akan people, I don't know whether because they think if they speak the white man's language, it means they are wiser, but they will not attempt to speak the language which they know you understand and they understand. And I'm not talking about in a public forum where there are a mixture of ethnic groups and languages. No, these are amongst you, your own selves. So I don't know whether it's ignorance or it's inferiority complex, or they're trying to ascertain maybe their status that, well, I've been to school, I have bachelor's or master's or PhD. I don't know. I look at it as ignorant because we are yet to come to ourselves, to accept our natural self as Africans in terms of religion, which they don't want to hear because they'll quickly go and quote you the Bible. And sometimes one time I was discussing something with my friends, and I said, well, you are an Akan. Do you know the Cree language? And at least Christians and Muslims at the end of prayers, they say Amen. Do you know where Amen came from? And he said, yeah, Amen is let it be. I said, no, it's not let it be. You go back, you are a Akan person. Go to your grandparents and let them explain Amen to you. Because in the Akan language, a person born on Saturday, if it's a boy, it's Kwame. If it's a girl, it's Ama.
Right.
If you look at their appellation and their response to greetings is Amen.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other days of the week have responses to greetings. I'm Kofi. So if you greet me, I will respond, Ya Esi. For Kwame and Ama, their response is Amen. And the appellation of Amen is Oti Anankedro, which means he who or she who is genderless has a cure for the serpent. And you have to cast your mind back into ancient Egypt, where the desert was full of dangerous animals, including snakes, serpents, which they can bite to kill you. But their god of Amen supposedly had a cure for the serpent. So if you look, the appellation of Kwame or Ama is Oti Anankedro, which means he who has a cure for serpent. And once again, of course, I know we learn from you. We know who Amen is in ancient Egyptian topology. But when you talk about trying to be yourself, the Africanness in you, in terms of culture, religion, even dietary, look at our parents, our sisters, our grandparents. They used to live over 100 years now. Now in Africa, we are lucky if we hit 60 years because we have affected Europeanism and Americanism, both in intonation, both in dietary, both in clothing. You go to Africa and you see someone in three-piece suit in a very hot office, on air-conditioned office, because the person has to be in three-piece suit because the person is the manager. The person, you look at our judges and with that British costume attire. Sometimes they sit in the courtroom with no heat, dressed in this black, and black absorbs heat.
And not only that, I just opened up a letter from Ghana, from our brother who has from here, our brother Fraser, who's now living in Ghana, and he sent me a newspaper article, and there were the judges in these white wigs and red garments or black garments. And I said to myself, when I first saw that in 1961, when I first went to Africa and I was in Ghana, I was shocked to see these folks coming out of the court, and they were wearing these wigs. Now, that was 61.
Yeah.
Now, here we are in the 21st century, and we haven't thrown that off. And so that means that the mind control of the European system is still at play in a heavy way. and we have to fight against it and be conscious that we really are suffering from a shattered consciousness. They have attempted over these 500 years of the European enslavement of us to destroy our consciousness, and then our identities have been fractured. So we identify British or Portuguese or Arab or French, and the African identity is not clear. We have to restore the understanding of who we are as the parent people of the universe, and then deal with these ideologies that have been imposed upon us that create this confusion. If we talk about Christianity or Islam or even Judaism, all of those religious traditions have a deep root in the African traditions of the Nile Valley or what we call Egypt or Ethiopia. And so as this history is unfolding and we get an understanding of it, we can now restore the African consciousness to African people, so they don't have to be saying that because I speak French, I'm French, or because I speak English, I'm English, or because I speak Arab, I'm an Arab. So we have to get back to our roots culturally, and three things have to be established as we pull together our unity for the future. Every system has three components, and I always tell people this when I try to teach. The first component of a system's understanding is your productive creative capability, and we translate that into economics. So if people are thinking the way I try to teach them, I ask them to put in their mind or on a piece of paper a triangle, an equilateral triangle, equal sides, and at the base polarity on the left side of the triangle is your economics. Your economics is your productive creative capability. Everything to live has to be productive and creative, otherwise it dies. And so the economics of your community, the economics of your physical body, the economics of the ecology that you're living in has to be in balance and harmony. But in order for that economics, that creative productive capability to service you, you need politics. You need management. You need administration of your economics. So politics is not what politicians do. Politics is created to manage economics. So economics and politics are the foundation of any system, whether it's the system internally of the cells of your body, whether it's the sociological system or ecological systems to live on the planet Earth. Economics and politics is the foundation. Your productive capability links your management capability. But your economics and your politics can't service you if the top polarity is not clear, and that is culture. Culture is the mind, the values, the deep thoughts, the understanding of the mysteries of the universe. And culture is not just what you wear and not just what you eat. It's a deeper process, high culture, as opposed to survival culture. And culture tells you what type of economics to develop and who to do your politics with. And in the African deep tradition, the economics is a communal process involving the three C's, communal, cooperative, and collective, is the key to African culture. And so we need an economics that serves all of our people, not just a few at the top that are the managers. We need a politics that is for all of the human family that you are serving, and not just for a few individuals who have an identity that allows them to do what they need to do. So we need to refashion our mindset in order to refashion our world. And that's what all these conferences, that's what all this activity, these universities are modeled after the European universities. We have to Africanize them. Our diets are modeled after those who want to be in the European mode are eating the European diets and not a diet based upon their human needs. And then our state systems are modeled after what we copied from the Europeans and not after, for example, Dr. Clark said, Africans didn't have the nation state, they had the territorial state. And that meant that it was a composite where you have various ethnic groups and other peoples living in a functional unity. So we've got to go to the drawing board and restore our world for ourselves. And then understanding that the European war against us has been a twofold process of dealing with the mind, mind, in order to control the mind, mine. And that process initiated enslavement 500 years ago. That process was the reality with the super exploitation of colonialism 100 or 200 years ago. And that process is a reality today when we have 50 or 60 years of the new nation state. It's really a neo-colonial state. And so we have to continue to transition to what can be a meaningful African economics, politics, and culture for the future. And so that means we got to redefine, just as the concept of going back and taking it and then flying off into the future. That's a deep Akan concept. And Sankofa. And so, and the concept of rebirth and resurrection, that's a deep concept coming out of all African cultures, and it's institutionalized in the Nile Valley. Wherever we see a statuary that looks, or a monument that looks like the George Washington Monument down in Washington, D.C., it has nothing to do with Washington. It has to do with the Africans' deep concept of rebirth and resurrection. And so we have to name it and claim it. Name our oppression and know that we have to fight it. Name our victories and know that we have to enhance it. And so I appreciate what you're doing on the radio station. I know that the education that I have that allows me to have a PhD is not the real education that allows me to move around the world with power and dignity. Education I call the European education, which includes graduating from grammar school as the president with all these white kids, leader of the high school, going on to Lafayette College, and a leader of Lafayette College going to Europe and studying in French, and then coming back to Columbia, getting a master's and a PhD. That's my $1 million white boy education. It allows me to move around their world with power and dignity. But the reality is that which makes me me and allows me to get on the airways and travel around the world and to bring this message, that which makes me me, is my multi-billion-dollar African education that began in the beginning in the mind of my mother and my parents. And they conceived in me a greatness before I could even think for myself. And they helped to work that into the culture. I grew up in what was in Newark, New Jersey, but it was a village. I grew up on 10th Street. I grew up on 14th Street. My mother's family was on 13th Street. My father's family was on 12th Street. And that community, of the 100 kids I grew up with, 90 of us made it. Why? Because we operated like an African village. We had the 3C value system: communal, we're living together; cooperative, we're working together; collective, we're sharing together. And they had a sense of developing your individuality, but that's not the end-all and be-all. It's a collectiveness, a community, working together, sharing together. That's what you should be all about. And so we have to control the socialization process that produces the values, control the acculturation process that produces how you fit into society. And we just can't be cogs in the materialist wheel of the European world, making money and sending some home to Ghana and Nigeria, and then putting the rest in a big house, and then thinking that that is what life is all about. Life is understanding the mysteries of the universe and trying to move to a divine order spiritually, in which you have more than just your material wealth as your criteria of your success, but you have a spiritual understanding of how you serve and how you carry on and how you sacrifice and how you prepare a way for others. So when Brother Small is speaking strong as he is, he's talking about understanding our Africanness and understanding our African traditions so that we can develop a new spirituality, a new African. And we just don't want to be at the stage where Africa was 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. We have the capacity to understand what that development was and transform it into a new African. And the new African should not be and cannot be a copy of the French and the British and the Americans. Those are transitional stages, potentially building blocks for a new African future. So that's why we need the dialogues, we need the conferences, we need the radio programs such as this. We need the books, but if you read the books by Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, you have to understand that this brother and others in the tradition that I stand in took on the European tradition and challenged it about the Europeans being the center of the world, about the Europeans developing science and technology and medicine and philosophy, about the Europeans understanding how you could mix people together and make a state out of that, how the Europeans were the first to have writing and come up with sacred texts. All of that is bogus. All of that is incorrect. All of that is not truth. The folks who were able to use their human capacity to create culture and civilization and science and technology and architecture and the understanding of the movement of the heavenly bodies, all of that comes out of our tradition. And Europeans and others who did not have that, who came into our world, stole our knowledge, declared themselves the producers of the knowledge, and then imposed upon us a dehumanizing process which creates a negative understanding of self, and then parading themselves as the founders of math and science and philosophy and spiritual traditions. We have to go back to the reality and search for our truth. And when we do, we can then raise the questions that are now being raised with UN resolutions on the question of reparations, on the question of slavery, on the question of colonialism. We can now understand that when we organize in the Caribbean to deal with racism and colonialism and reparations, we need to organize in Black America to do the same thing, and that's happening, and we need to organize on the continent. I just came from a conference in the Gambia which was designed to prepare a UN resolution to deal with reparations, colonialism, and slavery. And so I'm looking at the newspaper now that has the Minister of Justice of the Gambia, a beautiful Queen Mother. And the headlines is claiming justice for people affected by slavery is noble. And it says under that Justice Minister. And then just below her, there's an African leader, and the statement is Gambians and Sinhalese are one people, by a mayor of one of the towns. And then under that is a photo of France Fanon's daughter, Muriel Mondes-France Fanon. And it says next to her picture, Africans deserve financial compensation for slavery. This is the front page of the Daily Observer in the Gambia and on July 28th in a meeting of African peoples to map out a strategy to present to the UN, to raise, to present to the world community to deal with the question of the dehumanization of enslavement and the devastation of colonialism and the destruction of African art and culture and reparations, the restoring. And we can make our demands on the European world and the Arab world that help to instill devastation for African peoples with their exploitation. But the most significant, and then we can make the demands, as you said, for destroying the debt forgiveness, putting in place developmental projects that are collective and not worrying about a check in each individual's pocket. But more important, we need to give reparations to ourselves. Expect it from the outside world because it's deserved and it's justified. But we have to give ourselves reparations. And that means we have to learn to control our economics and our wealth. We have to put in place a politics not of exploitation but of management for the greater people. And we have to have a culture that sees us as God's chosen. We don't have to wait from someone else's narrative about who are the chosen people of God. We know that we have been, that's been our experience. And so we have to put our Africanized world in place. Everything that we do, try to Africanize it, looking for the best values of our people. If there's something important in the European world that we can use it. Something important in the African world, use it. But at the center of what we do is our Africanization process. And we won't have a meaningful future until we plan it, name it, claim it, put the plans in place. And as one of our great brothers, great professor who was teaching at the City University, he said, Dr. Amos Wilson, in his great book of 1,000 pages, we need a blueprint for Black power. And he was referring basically to the struggles in the New World and in America. But our generations are saying, going beyond him, we need a blueprint for Pan-Africanism. And that's why we're having these various meetings, these different associations, these going to the international community, putting demands on the banks, et cetera, because that's part of a blueprint. So there's no need for you to work hard, get your education, and be on the outside of this. You need to work hard, get your education, and put in place outside of your formal education a serious African education, and then you'll be a part of this process of change, transformation, rebirth that we're actually going through. And I'm fortunate to be a part of it for almost 80 years. And so when you mention Hugh Masekela, I'm thinking of him in the 60s and the 70s, particularly 74, when I had a hotel room next to him at the Continental Hotel in Kinshasa at the Muhammad Ali fight. And I'm thinking about a Hugh Masekela that I also met a couple of years ago in 2012 when they had the diaspora, the African Union, called for thousands of our people to come together to South Africa to deal with our future. And there was 2,000 to 3,000 of us meeting. And the high point was the banquet. And Hugh Masekela, they had a young lady imitating Miriam Makeba, and she was wonderful. And then when the next presentation came out, it was Hugh Masekela in the flesh. And once he started playing and his great music tradition, everybody got up. Robert Mugabe, I see him dancing. The head of South Africa got up. I was up. Everybody was up dancing. And that powerful celebration occurred in the evening. And we went to after 12 o'clock. And then that same space in South Africa was transformed in the next 7 or 8 hours into the meeting place of 2,000 of us plus, organized in an unbelievable way. It started from Algeria with their delegation, and it went all the way up and around to Zimbabwe. And there were people from Cuba and from America, and all of us were meeting to find a common agenda for African peoples so we could celebrate at night in the best possible way. And then we got serious in the next few hours in that same space and started mapping out how can we find the economic cooperation, the political cooperation, the cultural cooperation. So our people need to know these things are happening. I've experienced them. My wife has experienced them. She is the pioneer. She first went to Africa in '60 with the Operation Crossroads program, and she was in Nigeria in a little village called Ehamufu, helping to build a school. And in that same area is where they started to lay the plans to build the University of Nigeria at Nsukka. And the next year I went to Africa, and I was in a little village to build a school, but then Abidjan in the Ivory Coast, the capital, was having its first real independence celebration. So we were in the middle of all of that. We have seen the building of the nations and the building of the cities and what comes out of the African villages, our culture and whatnot. We see that it has to be reformed and refashioned because it has been contaminated by the poison of European and Arab minds and values, which are negation of our people. So we're on a victorious path. And the fact that a brother like a Sheikh Anta Diop could talk about reclaiming the Nile, and he lays it out, and then someone called Dr. Ben is talking about the same thing, and he lays it out in his books and his tapes, and then Dr. Clark coming up from the south, the son of a sharecropper, and he lays it out, and then Africans from the continent, like our brother Adu Bohan, who was one of our premier scholars in Ghana, he laid it out, and then you had in Nigeria, Akin Jobin, the University of Ife, who came to teach with us for a couple of years. We have to be able to tap into the African component of our life for empowerment and utilize the European for whatever we can use it, but not become Europeans in the process. So the technology that the Europeans may have achieved and some of the other important attributes in terms of medicine, should be a part of our world, but combine it with the African understanding of the universe and African traditions and African knowledge. So I'm excited, heading toward my 80th birthday in my hometown, Newark, New Jersey, where we had the Black Power Conference that I was at in 1967, and at the time that we had the Black Power Conference, in 1967 we had the Urban Rebellion. And in that same year, we had the Black Power Conference, in which we were meeting to plan our future. And that was in the 60s and the 70s. We met in Gary, Indiana, tens of 10,000 of us talking about we are an African people, and we were naming it and claiming it. And then we helped with the African resistance movement, the African New Nations, and we're building these bridges in the Caribbean and Brazil and in Africa. So you can tap into the negative, and it's there to be tapped into, but you got to also restore your mission, your purpose, and by tapping into the positive, those victories that we have won as we move out of the dehumanizing processes into the elevating processes of being the chosen people on the planet.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Jay. Well, if you have a question, you have 1 minute now to call 973-409-6422. That was Dr. Leonard Jefferies.
And then let me give the family my telephone number, because there may be individuals and organizations that want to keep in touch with us. And my telephone number here in Jersey is 201-837-1355. Let me say it again, 201-837-1355. And the cell is 201-668-7973. Again, 201-668-7973.
Well, that was the contact numbers of Dr. Leonard Jefferies. And as a matter of fact, if you want to be in touch with Dr. Daniels and Professor Small, you can still go through Dr. Daniels if you don't have their contact, or through Jersey Ghana Radio Anything Africa. Yours sincerely, we will hook you up with them. Hopefully, we will touch on the event coming, the big event coming in November at the Robert Trent Hotel.
That telephone number is, again, the State of the Black World, and the telephone number is 888-774-2921. Again, 888-774-2921.
That's 888-774-2921. And I pretty much believe the producer will cook up something so that we will do a program a week before the event. We will do a program specifically geared towards that event here at Jersey Ghana Radio. So hold your questions if you were not able to call in, because we're listening to the lectures of Dr. Leonard Jefferies, who at 80 years, he's so strong. The other time I met him in Newark, first station, Dr. J, and then when Ethiopian Airlines started their service in Newark, I met him. I said, Dr. J, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I have to come. And he still looks so strong. And the most important thing is this: his services, like Professor Small, Dr. Daniels, and the rest of them, their services. You call them anywhere at any place, unless they are booked, they will respond positively to come. And I don't want to put anybody down, but sometimes we find encountering difficulties getting guests on our program, and especially our own people that you eat, maybe drink, dance with them. There are all the time several excuses. But we have those others also, scholars, intellectuals, who, like we said, Dr. Daniels, we contacted him, when was it? I think Thursday evening?
Yes. And he was ready. Yes, and he was ready.
Thursday evening. And he said, you got it, brother. I'm coming. And he just sent a text. When I responded, he said my email went into his spam box. But he just found it, So there are people who are all the time willing, because if you possess the knowledge and you don't share with people who need it, what is the need? What is the use of it? To possess the knowledge and don't share?
And you have to have a mission more than just getting a good job and getting a good education. The mission has to be for you to share this, and so you have to become a teacher and a meaningful preacher, and someone sharing the knowledge. So I have all the degrees that the European world gives, and so I can move through the world as Dr. Jefferies. But I'm not sharing what I have because of the European world. I'm sharing it because of the African education. That means you sit at the feet of the masters and the elders, that you understand the knowledge that your parents and your mothers and your aunties have, and that you begin to deal with this, enhancing your humanity and not just becoming a technician to master technology to create a bigger and greater atomic bomb. But you need to enhance your humanity so that you can make a contribution to the forward march of the human spirit. So that's what we'll be celebrating in Newark. And so I'd like to see the different Ghanaian groups and Nigerian groups and Ethiopian groups join us and maybe get a table. The fee to go for the 4 or 5 days is $100, but it's worth it, and it'll set people off on a new, encouraging life path to help this transformation to African victory become a reality.
Well, Dr. Leonard Jefferies, we thank you so much, and we know that you wouldn't hesitate to join us the next time we call you, which is going to be a week before the event. And you said something that I just wanted to highlight, that Europeans stole everything and anything from Africans. Yes, and it's indeed. One example is the oath of medicine for medical doctors. They say Hippocrates, when Imhotep was a genuine medical doctor, architect, surveyor, you name it.
That's right.
When he was long dead and gone, when he had created a medical journal for them to come and learn and take it to Greek and then Roman and so on and so forth, they call Hippocrates the father of medicine. The father of medicine.
Right.
It doesn't make much sense. But unless we come back to learn our Africanness and what our ancestors done, Europeans will all the time claim things that were not theirs as theirs.
Right. But the significant thing is that African culture is hidden in plain view. It's there for people to see. The George Washington Monument was not about George Washington. It was about the African concept of resurrection and rebirth. Lincoln sitting in a pillared temple in Washington, D.C. is not Abraham. It's the Egyptian pharaoh sitting in a pillared temple. And the medical doctors to this day, when they swear an oath and take the oath to do right in the medical practice, they pay homage to the Greek reference to medicine. But they also pay homage to Aesculapius, and that is Imhotep. That's his name in Greece. So the founders of medicine have been acknowledged as a part of the African tradition, but it's hidden in plain view. And so we need to go deep to find this knowledge and make it real. We are the blessed people on the planet. We're the mothers and fathers of humanity, and we need to continue to understand we have a role much larger than anybody else, and we're not the enslaved persons of anybody. So the father of medicine clearly is acknowledged by the ancient Greeks who went to Africa to get their knowledge and create their secret societies of knowledge when they went back to Greece, but they pay homage to the Imhoteps of the world.
And Dr. J, our time is about. I want to ask a last question, very, very last question. The producer has signaled me, so and maybe hopefully with a quick answer. Well, no, you take your time to answer. Monday is a holiday in honor of Christopher Columbus.
Yes.
What did Christopher Columbus did? What did
he became the premier vehicle for the destruction of African peoples, with the enslavement process and the devastation and the genocide of tens of millions of Native Americans. There's no way in hell any black person or any person of color or anybody, even white folks, need to be celebrating Christopher Columbus. He was lost. He didn't know where he was going. He crossed the ocean and by mistake ran into the so-called New World, and so it's named the West Indies after India. Everything is wrong. And then he saw these innocent people who welcomed him. And then he even wrote in his books that these are people who don't realize who and what we are, and we can take them. Christopher Columbus is the symbol of the predator European who is out to control the world for his own interests and does not hesitate to become involved in wars and destruction and the genocide of people. So as a youngster in Newark, New Jersey, I had to parade up and down Broad Street because they were celebrating Christopher Columbus. I did not know what I know now. If I had known what I know now, I would have said, no, your parade, you've got Italian background or Spanish background, but this person who has Native American background, which I have, and African background, which I surely am, there's no way in hell I'm going to celebrate Christopher Columbus. He was the prototype in 1492 of the predator that came into the New World and has created over these last 500 years all of this death and destruction.
Well, and so, Doc, with that, we thank you so much. We will play some ads of our sponsors, and then go on to a Christopher Columbus song by Burning Spear, who tells us that Christopher Columbus was a liar. And then we will come back and let our producer close this event for us. But please, just maybe hang on a little bit for one of our ads. Then we'll go to the music and then we close. Let's get an ad now for our sponsors.
Money transfer you to me, airtime transfer you, and transfer you to me, which is in the company, you're not more part, you're the point, and you better your medical doctor, when you send out medicine, nephrology, renal medicine associate LLC, your kidney and blood pressure specialist. Only the beginning will get it to 108,000. 973-674-8100. 973-674-8400. Canal 745 Northfield Avenue, Lower West Level, West Orange, NG 07052. 973-731-3800. 973-731-3881. Email kidneydoctor@link.net. Andrew Betty and the two software week.
Yes, that's Burning Spear saying that Christopher Columbus is a liar, so just blast him. Yes, he tells it all. And he's saying he's the first one who discovered Jamaica. So what about the Arawak Indians and the few black men who were around there before him? Yes, Burning Spear. So mix up. Yes, God bless you. Liar now, Christopher Columbus. When he got to the Americans, he thought he was in India. So then he ended up calling them the Indians. He if he was in school, he would have got an F for fail. That's what Bernie Spear is telling him now. And yet it's celebrated in America. Monday is Christopher Columbus Day. Most city offices are closed. Yes. For someone who is credited into quotes for facilitating slavery and the slave trade. By the way, he had to get African navigators, at least. Otherwise, he couldn't have sailed more than 100 miles out sea. Yes. We'll come to more songs later.
How do we make it? What we have against is not going to be easy. With your support, Ghana will work again. Support the man who can bring about change. Not onto IamFonana.com. Download the I Am Fonana app on Google Play Store and sign up. Next, choose Amazon Studio List. Then select payment method and enter payment details and hit the donate button towards change. I am for change. That's why I'm donating now.
I am Fonana. I'm donating now. Ghana is ready for change. Donate for change. $1, a pound, or a euro a day, and send them away.
Join me. Join me. And link international shipping company 64 over 40 minutes, recounting his achievements in the road sector. The story is unfortunately not corroborated by the facts on the ground. For instance, he mentioned works on the Dromore Tampa Road, as he did last year. At the time President Kofi was leaving, the 40-kilometer stretch from Dromore to Suma had been done, leaving 7 kilometers from Suma to the medical doctor, internal medicine, nephrology, renal medicine, associate your kidney and blood pressure specialist. New Avenue, it's Orange, NG 07018 973 674 8100. 973-674-8400. And now 745 Northfield Avenue, Lower West Level, West Orange, NG 07052 973-731-3800. 973-731-3881. Email kidneydoctor@link.net. Andrew Bedu, and that's what's happening.
Yes, and we now come to the very end of our program. We would like to express our sincere appreciation to Dr. Leonard Jefferies, Professor James Small, and Dr. Ron Daniels. I hope we've learned a lot from them. And Dr. Jefferies, please, as you know, Jersey Ghana Radio, Anything Africa, and you and the rest of your peers are inseparable because we try to portray, we try to convey, we try to teach through our elders, such as you, our people. As we speak now, we have some students at the University of Cape Coast who gather around computer to listen through the internet, and we have some others scattered all across. We have listeners from South Africa and the Caribbean who listen to this program. So we are learning, of course. Kofi Ayim is also learning a lot from most of our guests who have insightful knowledge about Africa and the Black community and the race, who are intellectuals, who are well endowed in the subject of Africanness. And we thank you all the time we hope we'll catch up with you before the main event in November. And Dr. J, do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, we are an African people, and we have to begin to understand it. I'm glad to hear that you have some of our young people in Cape Coast. We have 10 years ago we purchased the Sana Lodge. We've gone through some difficulties because of the Ebola crisis, but we still are hoping to make the Sana Lodge a special center. And one of our professors, who was the head of our board, is Dr. Nketiah, one of the great professors at the University of Cape Coast University, and also a traditional leader in the Western region. So that we have these links. We hope that we can get him and others to join us in the U.S. at these activities. So I'm certainly glad to hear that the students there, hopefully one day we can set up special workshop seminars at the Sana Lodge so that we have the tapes and the books for the students to relate their studies to, and as they go through the university, they can have a center where they can deal with this whole question of us as Pan-African peoples. So I appreciate it. I've been blessed to be so well received all over Africa. I've been blessed to be made a chief in several areas, including Elmina itself, and certainly in the Cape Coast area, we have been a part of the traditional structure, and we've been blessed to be linked to the Akan in Kumasi and Gogo, so that we are family. And so we open our arms to brothers and sisters from the continent here. We receive them as family, and we are received by family when we go to Africa. Brother Smalls just in Egypt, and then he flew with his group to Cape Coast, and they had a chance to travel around Ghana and also to see the potential for the hotel. I was in the Gambia at the International Symposium on Reparation, Slavery, and Colonialism. I was trying to get back to Ghana for the Emancipation Day celebration, but they wanted $2,000 just to fly from the Gambia to Ghana and back to the Gambia. And my wife and I, that would have been $4,000. We couldn't do it. So we continued to stay in the Gambia, which was good. But Brother Smalls carried on our traditions in Cape Coast, where we celebrate in the so-called castle, Cape Coast Castle. We bring down the British flag and raise up the Ghanaian flag, and then we go into the slave dungeons at midnight. And then on the 1st, that's the 31st of July, and on the 1st we go for a African royal celebration at Ayim, where the paramount chief Nana Haji and others come out and welcome us. And then we go to the graveyard across the road where the remains of an African from the Caribbean, a sister, and an African American from America were brought back to Ghana, so that the door of return is no longer the door, it's the door of return now. And they have an African burial in Ayim. So these are the linkages that we are about, and sharing our wealth and our knowledge and developing a meaningful African future is our responsibility as elders. We want to pass it down to persons like yourself, and then you can pass it down to even younger brothers and sisters.
Well,
so my African stool name is Nana Kwekujua Ajuman II of the Ogogo stool in Asante.
Yes. I think I got it. I got it wrong. The first time I said Nana Kwekujua Ajuman the first, but I should have known it's the second. And Professor Small is Nana Kofi Amponsa. And yes, Nana, Dr. Jefferies, thank you so much. We wouldn't know how much to thank you. But I'll leave that to our producer, Sadick Abubakar, who all the time does the closings, ceremony, and thank you. So Sadick, take it up. Let's go, and then we'll end up with another song by Robert Nesta Marley to conclude those things. So Sadick, let's go now.
Thank you very much, Brother Kofi. I don't know how to really thank giants, but I'll say it this way. Professor Leonard Jefferies, you've always been a mentor. You've always being the light that shines in the way of Pan-Africanism for all of us young ones who look up to you for advice, for guidance, and to see where Africa is going, where the black race is going. And we want to assure you in every little way we can that we would hold up to this struggle and hopefully sustain it, not as a struggle, but as a victory. If it doesn't happen in your lifetime, we'll make sure it happens in our lifetime, just so that posterity will remember you through us. And Professor James Small, I don't know how to say it. You have always provided us with the astute knowledge that we require. I know all the listeners around the world really appreciate any time you are on, and the kind of feedbacks we have. We're very grateful to have you with us all the time. You keep us alive in terms of knowledge, and I don't know whether it's worth living without knowledge. So thank you very much. Dr. Ron Daniels, I'm going to be at the, Institute of Black Worlds conference. I am praying that we get to meet and move on this struggle. You've always brought the great minds together. I was at the one in DC at Howard University. I joined the leadership there, and I'm very grateful for all of you being here. And to our listeners from around the world, wherever you may be, we want you to understand that this program is here for you. We are here to make sure that you are equipped with the knowledge, the scholars that we bring in or bring on tend to provide their huge and big shoulders for you to stand on to see the future and see where we're going. So thank you very much. And this is Anything Africa on Jersey Ghana Radio. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brother Jefferies.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we can reach out to the different African groups. We might have a Nigerian table, a Togolese table, an Ethiopian table, a Ghanaian table.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to work on seeing whether we can get folks to come and make the sacrifice, and so we can. This is not the end. This is the beginning of serious work.
Yes.
So I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to get the message out to our people. There's so much going on. I'm so glad at this stage I'm still a part of it. And for me to have the connections that I have is just extraordinary. I went to high school with Amiri Baraka. And my goddaughter is worked with Raz Baraka, his son. And I was in Jamaica in April to bury one of the mother of the children of one of our greats, Dudley Thompson. He died in 96. We're going to be honoring
Yes. I was assisting at the UN when you were there. Yes.
Yes, and so I went to Jamaica to make sure that she had a proper burial, and then we poured libation at his tomb, and then we had a chance to meet Bob Marley's granddaughter, and she was thanking me for contributions I had made, so she was aware. She had produced a film on Rastafari worldwide, and we had a chance to meet Emperor Haile Selassie's grandson, who was 6 when his grandfather was taken out of power. But I told him I had a chance to meet his grandfather 3 times in Addis, and it was wonderful to be able to be in Jamaica at a historical time. So,
I see. Wow. We thank you so much. We thank you. So we'll be in touch, Doc.
yes, and don't hesitate to call if you need something. You have
Yes,
my number.
absolutely. Yes.
All right,
Thank
now.
you so much. Peace. Peace.
Peace.
Yes, the great Bob Marley, he
Ghana
said
Radio,
music
yet to
is
so.
got to teach them lessons. Why is these teachings about Marco Polo
Jersey
and
Ghana
Christopher
Radio,
Columbus,
yet to so.
this wicked man? Couldn't it have been one and great African person who could have been teaching
Jersey
our people
Ghana
about
Radio, yet to so.
this particular track was released after his death?
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Africans throwing stones at colonial masters. That's why they released it after his death. That
Jersey
is one
Ghana
of the
Radio, yet to so.
of Robert Nesta Marley, member of the British Empire, MBE.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
When you hear the lyrics telling us to teach them about
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Marco Polo, how these wicked men, they rob, they kill,
Jersey
they
Ghana
rape,
Radio,
you
yet
know.
to so.
But why don't they teach them about Africans?
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to
Robert
so.
Nesta Marley coming to you live from Jersey Ghana Radio.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
And reggae is just an inspirational sort of
Jersey
song.
Ghana Radio, yet to
When
so.
you listen to sex things, the beat and the lyrics,
Jersey
it
Ghana
reinforces
Radio, yet to so.
you in the struggles of the common man, the black person.
Jersey Ghana Radio,
So many
yet
ways
to
to
so.
teach them. One of them is through lessons. As
Jersey Ghana Radio,
propagated here
yet to
by
so.
Bob Marley. Yes.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Music got to teach
Jersey
them one
Ghana
lesson.
Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
I think it was released as a single with the flip side
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to
being
so.
95 in the 80s. I was in England, I remember that time.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
7400 and now 745 Northfield Avenue.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
7052 973 731 3800.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Email kidneydoctor@link.net.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Very, very difficult, especially with the number of people.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Oh, no, okay, I was a radio program. Oh, you're Monday to Friday.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
I don't.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Yes, and this is the song of Hugh Matakela.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Coming up on this program, crowd will get event.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
One of his best jazz you can hear.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Program no say stressful in your Ron Daniels now.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
And to call a juicy
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
They don't want to come.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
I don't Dr. Jefferies.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Yes.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Yeah, Lua.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Yes, we are.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
That's for four, brother.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Be free as the via.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Hey, I want to know.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
What American credit programs are?
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Wait.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
By the way, now is background idea.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Okay.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Me too. My make us some
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
That's it. I'm for all booking. So all the Batman will fast now, but we are many on the back. If the Macaulay be so bad, I will fear.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Man, George is Bendiano.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
But with him, never come to coin program. Bella will new.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
And rap. Quasi, we can't. Maybe be a program waiting.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Oh, Papa.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Debbie.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Babincho, me two books are not ready.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
And some of them, a young lady embarrassed.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Emma, me about my cousin. Emma, or no custom for the
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
Emma, some of them at least, they are so good.
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.
They have refused to listen. You won't believe it. No,
Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so. 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 Jersey Ghana Radio, yet to so.